I'm calling to order a meeting of the Planning, calling to order a meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee on Tuesday, September 19, 2017, at 7:03 PM in the Aldermanic Chamber. If the clerk would call the roll.
Certainly. Alderwoman Mary Ann Lutzigoya.
Present.
Alderman at Large Dan Moriarty is here. Alderman at Large Brian McCarthy.
Present.
Alderman Tom Lopez.
Here.
It appears Alderman Ben Clemens is not here.
Yes, and I have not heard from him. Director Cummings had planned on being here this evening, and about 20 minutes ago sent me a text that he needed to go home. His wife was ill. So he is not going to be able to join us. Public comment, there's none. Communication, we have none. Unfinished business, none. New business resolution.
We have R-17-129 for the city to research the feasibility of purchasing the former Daniel Webster College property located at 20 University Drive.
Okay, and this was also assigned to the City Planning Board for their October 5th agenda and to the Board of Education. Alderman Moriarty, do you have a copy of the email I sent earlier today?
Not printed.
Okay, here,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And, did I give you two? No, I gave you different pages, okay. And here's one for the record.
Got it.
And first of all, I apologize. I thought this was being sent to each of you directly, and then when I attempted to send it to everyone, it ended up in my draft, so I apologize that you didn't get it until this afternoon. Director Cummings and I had talked, and he had planned to be here this evening to just review some facts that he put together regarding to the Daniel Webster College property. As you know, the proposals are due by October 17th, and he had provided some information in terms of what was due in the proposals. The auction is scheduled for October 23rd, and then he added some additional information regarding the property and interest in the purchase of Daniel Webster College. So I've presented those for you this evening. I don't know if, as you review them, you have any comments or questions. Alderman Lopez?
I'm just curious, under the miscellaneous facts that Director Cummings, I think, was the author of, it says that to date, no official expression of interest for using Daniel Webster College has been transmitted to his office. There were emails that were sent even before the discussion we had at last Board of Aldermen regarding Performing Arts Center from at least constituents urging that we do that. Is that not like, he's not here to answer, but that was, in my mind, official because constituents were suggesting that we look at that property.
And I hate to speak for him, and maybe Alderman McCarthy could help me, but my guess is that in terms of official expression of interest would be an actual serious buyer coming forward, or someone in a capacity to say, yes, I want to go forward with this. Alderman McCarthy?
I take that to mean from the city, that no city official had asked him to do that. Although it may mean that because he goes on to say the BOE is the closest municipal entity to
Right.
express an interest.
So he's referring to municipal entities?
Yeah.
Okay. I did get a communication from LIFA
I mean,
that
he
was
would
interested
not-
in the soccer field, but I don't think that's a municipal
I would
entity either.
I would expect that he would not get information from,
From
this is a
anyone else.
competitive auction. I don't think anybody else is going to tell us they're going to bid.
Yeah, that would be
Well,
kind of
that's
giving it
true,
away, right?
yeah. I thought in here he had talked about, he had talked at the end that he had coordinated regular tours of the site for both public, private, interested parties. And that he would be happy to schedule a tour at any time for anyone interested in previewing the site. I think under the bullet that you just referenced is the the bullet regarding school use, and that his statement is that the school administration would need to execute immediately on due diligence, and that they would need to take some action. And Alderman McCarthy, I don't know if you have any.
Well, we don't have a motion on the table, do we?
No. Do you,
I'll make a motion to recommend indefinite postponement,
okay,
and I'd like to speak to that.
okay.
So I thought about this, and October 23rd, October 17th is very close. It's a little closer than October 23rd, which is also very close. In that time frame, we have to have decided to purchase the college, and we have to put up the money. That leaves us very little time to do any diligence that is required of us before we make such a thing. And I commented at the end of the last meeting some of the reasons I opposed it. And I just want to make sure I get them all on the record if I can. The buildings on that site are of various ages. We don't know, for example, what snow load the roofs were built to. We know that, many of our municipal buildings are not built with a snow load capacity that is what code calls for now. We just spent $1 million fixing that at Sunset Heights Elementary School. And I don't know how that's not something we can determine in-house, and it's not something we can get determined in a short period from outside. We'd have to spend money to get a structural engineer to get in there. We'd have to get permission to go look at the things. We'd have to go find the construction documents for the buildings. It's just, it's a problem. The roofs themselves are of various ages as well. I don't know how much life there is left in them. It's just an additional cost that probably comes on top of it. Many of the buildings are of a vintage where they would have materials used in the construction like vinyl asbestos tile, asbestos ceiling tile, asbestos insulation on pipes that would have to be mitigated. We don't know what those things are. They're a lot of money to mitigate when you find them. We don't know if there is hazardous material on the site. We'd probably want to get a phase 1 environmental assessment done. That we can't do in-house. That we would have to go out with an RFP for and contract out. It's not cheap, and it's not something that I'd want to proceed without. The buildings were also built at a time when Mansville was giving away asbestos tailings as fill. And there are just a host of those issues that go on about it. I mean, we also know, there's sort of some confusion with that in the Performing Arts Center. We know that the auditorium there is not sufficient to fill our needs as a performing arts center. It's 250 seats or thereabouts, and is not small enough to be viable in the study of the Performing Arts Center that we had done. I don't know what we'd do with much of the other buildings. So there's been some suggestion, well, we could just buy it for the land. I don't know that we need the land. If we need to build another school, we have a site that we've already paid for, essentially. It was given to us as part of a development. I just can't see where we can come to a conclusion in the next 4 weeks that this is a great thing to do. We spent a lot of time mulling over whether to buy Burke Street or not. And look where that got us. I was not involved in the process from the internal side when we did that, but I have a huge number of questions about this that I'd want answered before I thought about purchasing that site. Plus, it pays almost $700,000 a year in taxes that may or may not come off the tax roll. If another nonprofit college buys it, then it will come off the tax roll. But it's currently paying those taxes. And if somebody else buys it, and I have heard from at least 2 outside entities that they declined to bid on it for exactly the same set of reasons I just described. I'm not sure whether those entities want to be named here, but it's not something we should undertake lightly. And I don't, and I just don't see how we could get it to a positive conclusion in that time frame.
Thank you. Any other comments? Alderman Lopez?
We are just talking about the feasibility study, having the Economic Development Office look at it, right? Or am I misunderstanding the ordinance?
Well, my understanding is that it's truly looking at all of the things Alderman McCarthy talked about. Is this something, because this is a binding agreement, I mean, and it's as is, so we have no idea what's there. Alderman Lopez?
So just a question to Alderman McCarthy is the way that the ordinance that we're looking at right now investing or requiring us to invest more than just the economic development department's effort? I don't think we've actually stipulated money that needs to be sent on a contractor or to examine the things that you are of concern about. This was just looking at the feasibility. Is that correct?
Alderman McCarthy?
This resolution is, the bond resolution that we didn't pass is to put up the money. And I can't understand why, I mean, we will need to spend outside money on contractors to get things done to do this. We don't have that money put aside either. And it seems pointless to me to do a feasibility study of something that can't possibly happen if we're not going to buy the property on October 23rd. I mean, we have to put up 10% of the money on October 17th as a deposit. And by November 7th, we would have to close on it and we would own it at that point. Or someone else is going to own it. So doing a feasibility study on whether we can buy a piece of property that may or may not be for sale at the time we're done with the study just doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
I guess I can see value in doing it just because we would know the value of the property, what is being bought. It's information that could be useful if it comes up for sale again in a year, if one of the bidders doesn't come through. I can't anticipate what is likely to happen with this property any more than we can anticipate the condition of the buildings, the condition of the roofs. There's a lot of unknowns on every side. It just makes sense for me to at least look at it and try to figure out what is there that's useful to us, just in case we are in a position where we're able to take advantage of that. But by not doing it, we are positioning ourselves to proceed no further on that entire opportunity. I don't think it's going to work for a performing arts center because personally, the way the performing arts center was presented doesn't look like it's going to boost the arts scene. It looks like it was supposed to replace the economic anchor that Alex Shoe Store went. So it doesn't do that if it's off in Daniel Webster College. But what it might have is a soccer field that we could use or an administration building that our school district could use. There hasn't really been any interest expressed to the Economic Development Office, but that may also just as likely be that's because nobody really knows what is likely, possible, or available. If somebody else does the roof study, or if it becomes evident that there was a recent structural evaluation done, as part of the foreclosure process or when Southern Hampshire University did it, we're not even positioning ourselves to find out whether somebody did some of the research for us.
Alderman McCarthy? And
If any of those
Alderman
things is
Moriarty.
true, the property will wind up back on the market after November 7th, and we'll have adequate time to go look at it at that point. I don't think we'll even get access to the property to do the things that need to be done on it if we're not clear that we're a serious bidder. I think if we were to put forth a proposal that said, we're willing to put up the check for $23 million, but you have to let us look at this first, you might get a chance. If you go in and say, we want to crawl up in the attics of the buildings and, do things that may or may not involve some destructive testing, drill holes around the site, and by the way, we're just browsing, I don't think we're going to get that. I can't see a way in which this makes sense in the time frame that we've got. And I can't see why, if there's a long-term opportunity there, we can't pursue that after someone else buys it. I think it's virtually certain the property is going to be sold.
It's an auction. It might go
Unless
down a
there's,
lot.
unless there's no bids that are viewed as even sensible or even legitimate, it's going to get sold. Someone may buy it at a very low price.
And Alderman Moriarty's been waiting.
Sorry.
That's okay, I needed the time to think.
Okay.
So Alderman McCarthy's correct that there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. I'll start off by saying I'm sort of leaning against this. Of course, we still will have the full board to actually make the vote, so we still have time to even think amongst ourselves. So on one hand, there are unknowns, and we won't be able to resolve those unknowns unless we actually investigate it. So putting the timeline aside, if you don't try, you'll never know. So there is some merit to passing this particular resolution just to investigate it and find out so that we do confirm that it was unsuitable, or maybe we'll have some uncertainty as what it's good for. My personal belief is that the city doesn't have a compelling need that drove it to look here in the first place. I'm not of the type of mind that the city should be in the position. I think the city should simplify what it does and focus on what it does and focus on schools, police, fire, public works, and leave it at that. So just out of principle, I'm not interested in even investigating. So my vote of whether or not to proceed with this doesn't have to do with the timeline. If you think the timeline's the problem, I would urge you to go ahead and vote for it, because you don't know that the timeline's going to be, it may extend, because at least you can find out. But I don't even want to find out. I mean, I'd like to find out of curiosity, but I just don't believe it's the city's role to be buying this property.
Alderman Lopez, you.
Well, I guess before what Alderman Moriarty had said, I was just going to point out that while it's very likely that what can be accomplished with the feasibility study could satisfy Alderman McCarthy, because with his years of experience, he knows the troubles we're going to run into. He knows all the things that need to be done. It could start to identify what is valuable and what's not to the other aldermen too. And I don't necessarily want to take us out of the position of being able to at least have everybody learn more about the position or the property and what's available. I understand that they're not going to let us drill holes in the roof or whatever necessarily in order to find out about these things. But by raising some of these questions, we may actually create a collective need for more information about the property to be presented, especially if they aren't able to sell it. If the business community at large is looking at this and they don't know what they're getting into and they don't want to, it may even improve a future effort. Or it may be that we find out there is some advantage here that we hadn't really thought of, like moving Brentwood or the school district's headquarters or any of the future needs that we have in the community. We may find out that there is a suitable location at Daniel Webster College, and we need to know more about that. I think not doing it at all just removes any possibility of finding out what we're missing out on. I don't necessarily think we need to start, looking at every piece of real estate that's available, but it is a pretty large one, and it is a pretty big opportunity.
Alderman McCarthy.
Well, I actually, to a large extent, agree with Alderman Moriarty's analysis on the need as well. I mean, we don't know what problem we're trying to solve. We know we have problems with Elm Street. We know we have problems with Mount Pleasant. We know we have problems with the Brentwood School. This isn't presented in the light of, there's a building that would be perfect there and a building that would be useful for this, and here's why that $23 million would solve those problems for us. This is, let's investigate a solution and see if we can find a problem that it fits.
Alderman Lopez.
I don't disagree with that either, but that's basically what we did with Alex Shoe Store, where we had a problem that we happened to have, and when that property became available, the feasibility study looked at it and said, well, that's exactly where you want to be putting your performing arts center, but you'll have to modify the building in order to do that. So if we didn't know what was going on with Alex or close our eyes to that possibility, we would not have been positioned for that solution. And I just want to make sure that we're looking at possibilities for longer term needs instead of just being focused on what's literally right in front of us, because we know we do have some issues coming up that we're going to have to address. We just don't have a solution for them.
Alderman McCarthy.
And I would point out again, we were looking for a solution to the Performing Arts Center's problem, and that solution happened to walk in front of us.
I guess I would just say that as we look at these dates, proposals are due by the 17th. The auction is scheduled for the 23rd. So we would have less than a month to put together a proposal. It's a large piece of property to take off the tax rolls. We aren't sure what we would do with it or what sorts of situations it would present to us. And I think to invest money to move forward, to do structural analysis and look at what's there that might be a potential problem, is not where we should be going at this time. If someone else buys it and there's something there that we want and we have more time to look at it, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I just think that this is a huge piece of property with unknown concerns related to it that we all have. And to just move forward is not where we want to be. And I would hate, as Alderman McCarthy said, we're now looking at the Burke Street situation, and I would hate to see us end up with an even larger piece of property pulled off the tax rolls and find out we have very serious problems with it. Alderman Lopez.
I think that was given, the testing of the roof and that kind of stuff was an example of the type of testing that Alderman McCarthy would particularly see as necessary. But I don't read this as necessarily binding us to doing that kind of thing. I'm not aware of that kind of test being suggested for Alex Shoe Store, and we did look at that as a solution too. So in my mind, all this is committing us to is a feasibility study. It's not really defining to what extent that is. And it's likely that the feasibility study will suggest that the date is too short, the property is much larger than we would need, or but at least we'd be aware of any specific opportunities that are worth pursuing independently. Whereas doing it after the auction when somebody else owns it, that kind of is showing a little bit more of our hand. If we find out we really did want that administrative building and we didn't study it ahead of time and somebody buys it, then we have to negotiate with them anyway. So while, yeah, we could probably have a longer time frame for doing that, then there's a clear owner versus a company that's just trying to auction it off. And again, this may be my inexperience showing, but I don't think we're committed to more than a feasibility study. I don't think there's any kind of cash expense that's mandated as part of this resolution.
Alderman Moriarty.
I'm going to offer sort of a practical, not procedural, but mechanical perspective here. So we don't have any of the city staff and we don't have the prime sponsors here. So as far as this staying in this committee, there's not much we can do as far as fact finding. We've had other resolutions that we've held on to a long time, and we've made a lot of progress with them in fact finding and functional. So I think what's happening at the moment is we're offering our opinion very well, but we can just, whether the motions to recommend final passage or motions to recommend indefinite postponement, whatever the motion is, as long as we vote on something and get it back to the full board, then it is essentially moving forward in the process. And then we can, between now and next week, maybe some more information will come up. But I'm suggesting that we just sort of move on.
Any other comments?
That's fair.
Okay, and I would just point out, as Alderman McCarthy did earlier, the legislation related to a bond was not passed at the last Board of Aldermen's meeting. So this feasibility study would have been step one in supporting the issuance of a bond. So just so we're all clear on where that is going. So the motion before us is to recommend indefinite postponement. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. New business ordinances, we have none. Do I have general discussion? Public comment? Oh, Alderman Moriarty.
Just R17-130, which sort of is the sister to this, is that currently at budget review?
No,
No, that's what I said. It was not passed at the full board.
first reading was not accepted by the board.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh,
right, that's,
okay.
That was why I felt like we weren't going to spend any money on it. We're just using city staff to look.
Okay, I
Yeah.
missed that part.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Alderman McCarthy.
Did the amendment to the Greeley Park legislation ever get distributed to the committee?
No, it did not.
Okay. I had gone over it with legal, and I think we had reached something that was acceptable with Alderman Shoneman as well. I'll make sure we get that out to the committee for next time.
Okay, so, yes, in fact, Alderman Shoneman contacted me this evening because some of you may have seen in Saturday's paper, it stated that there was going to be a public hearing on Gurley Park at our meeting, and I was kind of surprised. And there was supposed to be a correction in the paper. I spoke with Dean over the weekend. And I told Alderman Shoneman I hadn't seen anything, and he
Okay.
had not seen anything. So, yes, if legal could get that to Sue and get it to us, that would be great. Public comment, none. Any other remarks?
I have a
There's,
announcement.
yes.
Tomorrow at St. Patrick's Gym, from 10 o'clock a.m. to 2 p.m., there's a job fair called Employment Connect. It emphasizes applicants and employers meeting face-to-face and having a conversation, as opposed to the HR procedures that we're all more used to. And it's sponsored by the Greater National Continuum of Care.
Great, thank you. Any other remarks? There's no need for a non-public session. Do I have a motion? Alderman Lopez,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries, and we are adjourned at 7:29 PM.